The winter of 1865 held the frontier town in a grip so merciless that even the wolves kept to the timberline, their howls muted by the drifts. Snow lay heavy along the rutted street, blackened by ash and horse dung, and the buildings, ramshackle rows of wood slapped together in a hurry, leaned like weary men. In the bitter air, breath turned white and brittle, each exhale vanishing as quick as hope itself. It was here, in this hollowed-out settlement where fortunes were bartered and souls were broken, that Eliza staggered forward, her boots worn near through, her stomach a gnawing ache she could not ignore. She stopped outside the bakery, the warm glow inside mocking her through its frosted windows. A smell of rising bread drifted out when the door swung open, carried on the laughter of men whose bellies knew no want. Eliza lowered her head. Pride had once been her armor, but pride did not warm frozen fingers or hush the growl in her gut. She bent beside the bin where scraps were tossed, crusts, bones, the refuse of the well-fed, and with shaking hands sifted through the filth for something, anything, to carry her through the night. The street gave a cruel hush, broken by a sharp whistle. "Look there," a voice jeered. "Daughter of fine folk, root in like a hog." A chorus of laughter followed, thick with the meanness of idle men. Eliza did not turn. She had learned not to, yet every word landed like a lash, reminding her of who she had been and what she had become. Once she had known silks and supper tables laid with roast and wine. Once she had been addressed with courtesy, her name spoken with weight. But that life had burned with her father's house, raided and ruined by men who cared nothing for the worth of a girl left behind. Her breath hitched, but she found no crust, no bone, only cinders. The cold stung her eyes, though the tears came from deeper sorrow. She straightened, her frame thin as a shadow, and turned to leave when she saw him. He leaned against the hitching post, the brim of his hat drawn low, his coat dusted with snow that clung and melted slow across the worn leather. He was no townsman. That much was clear in the way his eyes moved, not quick with suspicion, but steady, like a man accustomed to watching horizons. A scar ran from his cheek to the line of his jaw, the sort of mark a blade leaves in a fight where mercy was absent. His name was not yet known to her, but later she would learn it, Jonah. For now, he was only a presence, a weight that shifted the air. Jonah watched her, though not with the hunger of the other men nor the pity of passing women. His gaze carried something different, an appraisal, as though beneath the ragged dress and hollow cheeks he saw something they had missed. He pushed off the post and walked forward, boots crunching in the frozen mud. The laughter behind her faltered, replaced by a silence that hung sharper than any insult. "You lookin' for food?" Jonah said, his voice even low, meant for her and not for the crowd. He held out a rough hand, palm open. In it, a half loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. "Take it." Eliza stiffened. Pride flared again, the last ember of a dignity nearly gone. She shook her head, her lips pressed tight, though hunger gnawed louder than reason. "I'm no beggar," she whispered. "No," he said, steady. "You're not." His eyes flicked to the men still lingering in their sneers. "But they don't get to say what you are." Something in the way he spoke, in the certainty of it, loosened the stone around her chest. She reached, hesitated, then pulled the bread close. The warmth seeped into her fingers, a small salvation. Yet suspicion shadowed her gratitude. Men did not give without reason. Not here. Not ever. The men muttered as Jonah turned his back to them, their laughter replaced by grumbles they dared not throw his way. He had the look of a man they would not challenge without cause, and no cause here would serve them well. Eliza studied him, unsure whether his intervention had spared her or bound her to another debt she could not repay. "Why?" she asked finally, voice ragged. Jonah did not answer at once. He pulled his coat tighter, glancing at the sky where snow thickened in the gathering dusk. "Because I know what it is to be thrown aside," he said at last. His tone carried no softness, only truth. "And because you're worth more than the scraps they'd have you believe." She searched his face, finding no jest there, no pity, only the plain conviction of a man marked by his own hardships. that frightened her more than cruelty, for cruelty she understood. Kindness was unfamiliar, dangerous, a hook that might reel her into some snare she could not yet see. The wind howled down the street, driving folk indoors. Lamps flared in windows, casting long shadows on the snow. Jonah shifted, his gaze sliding past her toward the storm gathering on the horizon. "You'll not last out here tonight," he said. "Come with me. I've shelter. Fire." Her first instinct was refusal. To follow a stranger, a man scarred and silent, was to step into peril. Yet the cold pressed against her bones, and the memory of the mockers still burned in her ears. Safety lay nowhere. In town she was scorned. Beyond it, death waited in the snow. "I don't even know your name," she murmured. "Jonah," he said, simply. Then after a pause, "And you?" "Eliza." The name felt strange on her tongue, as if speaking it aloud might remind the world she had once belonged somewhere. Jonah gave a small nod. "Eliza, you can choose. Stay here and freeze with their laughter, or take a chance on me." The storm answered before she could. A gust drove snow so thick across the street it veiled the lanterns, plunging the town into ghostly blur. Her breath caught, her hands trembling around the loaf. She met his eyes once more. Hard eyes, yet not cruel, and stepped toward him. He led her down the alley, boots striking firm against the ice, and she followed, clutching the bread as though it were life itself. The town fell behind them, its cruel voices swallowed by the storm. What lay ahead was unknown, perhaps more dangerous still, yet she felt the stir of something long buried, a spark not of pride, but of hope. And as the wind howled around them, she could not shake the feeling that this scarred stranger who had seen her worth would change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. ChatGPT said, "The morning broke gray and sharp, the kind of light that makes a man squint even before the sun clears the ridge." Eliza woke to the crackle of fire and the smell of coffee, so thin it was more memory than brew. Jonah had already saddled his horse, a rangy bay, with a white blaze down its nose, and packed what little gear he carried. The storm had passed in the night, leaving drifts piled against the cabin walls and silence thick as wool. She stirred from the rough cot, the bread from yesterday resting half-eaten beside her, and rubbed warmth into her arms. "We ride," Jonah said, pulling on his gloves. He spoke like a man used to command, yet not unkindly. "Town's no place for either of us." She hesitated, torn between the terror of the unknown trail and the certainty of scorn should she return. Something in the way he moved, efficient and steady, told her he did not ask lightly. She gathered the bread, tied a scrap of cloth about her hair, and nodded. By mid-morning, they rode out beneath skies as white as bone. The land stretched endless, rolling plains carved with frozen creeks, cottonwoods stripped bare, the mountains like blue shadows in the distance. The wind cut across them with a whistle, biting through cloth and skin alike. Jonah rode ahead, every movement calm, though his eyes scanned the horizon as if danger lurked behind every drift. It came sooner than Eliza expected. They crested a low rise, and from a stand of pines below burst 3 riders, coats flapping, rifles gleaming. The crack of a shot split the cold, snow kicking up near Jonah's stirrup. He yanked his horse sideways, drawing his revolver in a single fluid motion. "Down," he barked. Eliza slid from the saddle, her knees buckling in the snow. Her heart thundered, the world narrowed to hoofbeats and gunfire. Jonah's pistol roared, the sound rolling like thunder. One rider toppled, his mount bolting riderless into the trees. The others closed in, their shouts fierce and guttural. She crouched low, clutching the bread against her chest as if it were shield and salvation both. A man bore down on Jonah with a rifle raised, but the stranger's scarred hand was quick, steel flashing another shot, and the rifleman pitched sideways. Yet the third rider wheeled his horse toward her, eyes mean, teeth bared beneath a crooked hat. He swung down, boots sinking deep, and grabbed for her arm. Panic surged. She snatched up a rock, sharp-edged and heavy, and hurled it with every scrap of strength she had. It struck his temple with a crack. He cursed, stumbling, and in that breath Jonah fired again. The man dropped where he stood, snow blooming red beneath his head. The silence after was brutal. Only the horses stamped and blew, the smoke of the guns curling in the air. Eliza's breath came fast, her fingers raw and bleeding where the rock had cut them. She stared at Jonah, who swung down from the saddle, his jaw tight, eyes harder than she had yet seen. "You saved me," he said, voice rough. She shook her head, trembling. I didn't mean." "You did." He crouched, gripping her wrist not unkindly. "Remember that?" She looked at the fallen men, their faces frozen already, and felt sickness twist her gut. But beneath it another sensation rose, strange, unsettling, like fire kindling where ice had long held sway. She had acted, not merely cowered. And he had seen it. They did not linger. Jonah stripped the dead of ammunition, muttering of bounty hunters, and spurred his bay westward. Eliza rode behind him, silent, her mind a whirl of fear and questions. By nightfall, they reached the open wilderness. No lantern light, no roofs, only the vast sweep of land and the endless moan of wind through the canyons. Jonah found a hollow near a frozen creek, lit a fire, and spread his blanket. Eliza huddled close, her teeth chattering. He poured the thin coffee, the steam rising in ghostly wisps, and for the first time she caught a glimpse of weariness beneath his hard lines. "Why do they hunt you?" she asked. His eyes stayed on the flames. "Once I rode with men I shouldn't have, fought for a cause I thought was just. Turned out it was only greed painted noble." He took a sip, jaw clenched. "I walked away. They never forgave that." She studied him. "And now I'm caught in it." "You are," he admitted, "but you're stronger than you think. Today proved it." Her throat tightened. She had been called many things in recent years, trash, burden, beggar, but never strong. The word felt foreign, like a garment too fine for her shoulders. She lay awake long after he slept, the firelight flickering across his scar, the wolves howling far off in the timber. The following days were a blur of cold and hunger. They forded streams glazed with ice, their boots near freezing solid. Nights were worse, wind battering the fire low, wolves circling in the dark. Jonah taught her to ride harder, to steer the horse with her knees, to keep a blade close at hand. He spoke little, but his lessons were sharp, survival etched into each word. One night, as snow fell soft and heavy, she asked, "Do you regret saving me?" His gaze lingered on her a long time before he answered. "Not once." The words sank deep, warming places in her she thought long dead. She turned toward the fire, but a smile ghosted her lips despite herself. Their uneasy journey grew darker when the wolves came. The pack struck sudden, eyes glinting, teeth white in the fire's glow. The horses screamed, rearing, and Jonah sprang to his feet, revolver flashing. He dropped one wolf, then another, but more slunk from the dark, their snarls rising. One lunged at him, jaws clamping on his arm. He shouted, shoving the beast off, blood spilling quick and hot. Eliza seized a burning branch, her heart hammering. She swung it wide, sparks flying, the wolves flinching back. She screamed, driving them toward the trees, the fire painting her face wild and fierce. At last they scattered, shadows vanishing into the night. She dropped the branch, chest heaving, and rushed to Jonah's side. His sleeve was torn, flesh ripped deep. He gritted his teeth, binding it with a strip of cloth. Pain hollowed his eyes, but he gave her a nod. "You kept us both alive." She pressed her hands to the wound, steady despite the blood. "So did you." The fire snapped, casting light on them both, two souls bound by violence and survival, neither what they had been before. Eliza, once scorned as nothing, had stood against beasts of the wild. Jonah, scarred and hunted, had placed his trust in her. Together they sat, the night stretching endless, yet less lonely than it had ever been. And though the wilderness held more perils yet to come, Eliza felt, for the first time in years, that she was no longer walking toward death, but toward something unknown, dangerous, and alive. Dawn came slow, bleeding pale light across the horizon, the frost glittering like ground glass. Eliza rose stiff from the hard earth, her limbs sore, her mind restless from dreams of teeth and shadows. Jonah stirred beside the fire, his arm bound in cloth still dark with blood, his face drawn but steady. He pushed himself upright, eyes scanning the horizon with the caution of a man who never slept fully, even in silence. They rode west that morning, the wind still carrying the scent of smoke from towns they had left far behind. Eliza had grown steadier in the saddle, her back straight, her eyes sharper. Jonah noticed. Though he said nothing, the glance he gave her lingered, quiet acknowledgment that she was no longer a burden trailing at his side, but something else altogether. The land shifted from plains into jagged hills, rock ridges clawing at the sky. By midday, they came upon the weathered bones of an outpost, its timbers sagging, shutters clattering loose in the wind. The place was long abandoned, a relic from wars that had burned their way across the frontier. Jonah slowed his horse, gaze fixed. "We'll rest here," he said, though his hand never left the butt of his pistol. Inside, dust coated the floorboards, and the hearth was nothing but a hollow throat. Eliza gathered wood while Jonah struck flint. Soon flames licked upward, their warmth chasing back the chill. For a moment it felt almost like peace, firelight, the steady rhythm of breath, the illusion of safety. But Jonah's unease was a shadow that could not be ignored. She broke the silence. "They'll come again, won't they?" He met her eyes across the fire. "They don't stop. Men like them never do. Not until one side's buried." The words had scarcely left his lips when hoofbeats thundered outside. Jonah was already on his feet, revolver drawn, his face grim. The door splintered inward, and with it came 5 riders, guns gleaming in the firelight, their leader a broad man with a voice like gravel and a grin steeped in cruelty. "Well, look what we found," the outlaw sneered. The traitor himself, hiding with his whore. His gaze raked over Eliza, dismissive and cruel. "Trash, just as they said." Eliza flinched, but Jonah stepped forward, placing himself between her and the men. "You'll leave her out of this." The outlaw laughed, the sound harsh. "Always the noble one at Jonah? You turned your back on us, and now you play protector? You don't get to choose Worth. She's nothing. And you," he spat into the dirt, "you're already dead." The room erupted in motion. Gunfire cracked, splinters flying, smoke filling the air. Jonah's revolver roared, dropping one man where he stood. Eliza dove behind the hearth, the thunder of bullets rattling her bones. She peeked through the haze. Jonah moved like a man born for the fight, every shot deliberate, every step sure. But numbers pressed hard, and the outlaws fanned wide, hemming him in. Her chest seized. She could stay hidden as she always had, as they expected her to. Or she could rise. She remembered the wolves' eyes, the way fire had driven them back. She remembered Jonah's words, "You're stronger than you think." Her hand found the rifle propped against the wall, its wood worn smooth with age. She had never fired one. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it would burst, but she braced it to her shoulder, teeth gritted, eyes narrowing through the smoke. One outlaw raised his pistol toward Jonah's back. Without thinking, Eliza pulled the trigger. The rifle cracked, the kick slamming into her shoulder, and the man dropped with a cry. Silence fell for a heartbeat, stunned. Jonah glanced back, eyes fierce with both shock and pride. Then the fight surged again, hotter than before. 2 more men closed in, and Jonah's revolver clicked empty. He drew his knife, steel flashing in the firelight, and met them head-on. Eliza reloaded with shaking hands, fumbling, but the fire inside her burned steady. Another shot rang, another outlaw fell. The leader cursed, rage twisting his face. He lunged at Jonah, the 2 men colliding in a brutal struggle, fists and steel, each blow echoing like a drumbeat of death. Eliza's breath came ragged. She circled, rifle heavy in her arms, watching for a chance. Jonah staggered under a blow, the outlaw's blade glancing his side. Blood spread dark across his shirt, his strength faltering. "Worthless, both of you," the leader snarled, pressing him down. "No," Eliza said, voice sharp as the crack of ice. She raised the rifle, steady this time, and fired. The leader's eyes went wide, his body jerking before he crumpled to the floorboards. Silence crashed over the room, thicker than smoke, broken only by the hiss of the fire. The outlaws lay scattered, their threat ended. Eliza dropped the rifle, her hands trembling, breath shuddering in her chest. Jonah leaned against the wall, bloodied but alive, his gaze locked on her. For a long moment, neither spoke, the air between them heavy with everything unspoken. At last he said, voice hoarse, "You saved me." Again. She knelt beside him, pressing cloth to his wound, her touch firm, no longer timid. "We saved each other." The firelight flickered across their faces, painting them not as beggar and outlaw, but as something forged stronger in the crucible of survival. Eliza met his eyes, and in them saw not just the man who had given her bread, but the one who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. Outside, the wind howled, carrying away the smoke and the stench of blood. The night was long, and the road ahead darker still. But Eliza felt no fear. Not anymore. She bound Jonah's wound with careful hands, her voice steady as she said, "They called me trash, but I know now, I am more. And you," she touched his scarred cheek lightly, "you saw it before I did." Jonah gave a weary smile, the first she had seen from him, faint but real. "The world tried to throw you away, but you rose, stronger than any of them." The fire snapped, a shower of sparks rising toward the rafters. Eliza leaned back, her chest rising with breath both heavy and free. She had crossed from shadow into flame, from discarded to defiant. The night stretched before them, dangerous, uncertain, yet alive with promise. And as the embers glowed, she knew this was not the end, but the beginning of a road neither had chosen, yet both would walk together. So, what truth lingers here in the ruins of the outpost? That worth is not given by others, nor taken away by scorn. It is proven in fire, in blood, in the will to rise when the world calls you nothing. If this tale stirs you, remember it well. And ask yourself, what worth lies unseen in those the world has cast aside?